Hey, safety officers, thanks for tuning in to our safety officer training for fall of 2021. Just wanted to start with our contact information. I'm Dan Payne, the competitive sports coordinator, being your narrator here today. I'm the only professional staff with competitive sports this semester. We also have one graduate assistant, Eli Malahan, that you will hear from as well throughout the semester. We do not have a second graduate assistant this semester, so we're down one staff member. But we do have student staff. Our competitive sports student staff, mostly our supervisors, will be popping in and out of your practices if you practice here on campus. Here's our contact information. You probably already have this. It's also available on our website. Let's talk about your role. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for fulfilling the role that you do. Without you, club sports in its current form couldn't operate. So thank you for stepping up and fulfilling these responsibilities. Some specifics of what you're going to do in your role as a safety officer mostly is to respond to injuries and emergencies. So that's going to include some paperwork. If you do have an injury, all safety officers are required to be CPR, first aid, and AED certified. If you do have that certification already, great. Send that in to me, a copy of that into me. That's one of the things that the clubs have to do in order to be able to practice and meet at the beginning of the semester. If you do not have a certification, we do offer those classes. I'm currently organizing another one, and we'll send that information out shortly. You do not have to get the certification through us, but you do have to have it. Your job is also to maintain the safety of all the equipment that you're going to use, the space that you're using, whether that's a field or a court or whatever, as well as the players. Use sound judgment and adhere to any safety policies that the facility has if you're practicing off campus, or any of our facility policies that we have and procedures as well if you're on campus. If we do get a blood-soaked object like a jersey or a piece of equipment or something like that, make sure that's properly being disposed of. And each club should have a first aid kit. If you do not have one of those, that's something that you can buy with your funds, and we can reimburse you for that as well. But each club should have one. All right, like I said before, your role is crucial, so please take your responsibility seriously. Don't be that person that thinks, oh, it's not going to happen to me, right? It's not going to happen to our club. Our club's not going to get sued, or someone on our club is not going to get seriously hurt. Please do not have that attitude. The better attitude to have is that it is going to happen, and prepare yourself for it ahead of time. And that's what this training is designed to do, is to help you set some expectations and give you some resources for what to do when those things do happen. All right, let's talk about some emergency action plans. Weather. So remember, one of your jobs as a safety officer is to identify inclement weather, primarily in the form of thunder and lightning. So if you see lightning, any kind, or hear thunder, our official policy is that it's your job as a safety officer to shut down your practice or shut down your event immediately and find shelter. Every lightning strike you see, or every boom of thunder that you hear, requires a 30-minute delay. So if you see lightning at 6:05, then you have to evacuate the facility, and the first time you could come back to use the facility will be 30 minutes after that, so 6:35. Then if you hear a boom of thunder at 6:06, now 6:36 is the time you can come back. If you hear another one again at 6:10, then 6:40 is now the earliest you can come back. So it accumulates. Find shelter is important. So if you're practicing here outside at the club sport complex, the best place to find shelter is the hallway or your cars. Rain is also an issue. The only time you would really need to cancel a practice because of rain is if a facility you are using becomes unsafe. So our fields outside, they do have a drainage system built in. But if we get a substantial amount of rain and puddles start to form and people start to slip and slide or fall down because they can't get any traction, those are the kind of things you should be looking out for when it comes to rain. So you can practice in the rain as long as you want, play in the rain as long as you want. But if a facility becomes unsafe because of rain, that's when we should shut it down. Now, again, rain is often accompanied by thunder and lightning. So if you see thunder, or if you see lightning or hear thunder, then you'll follow that procedure as well. Let's talk about tornadoes. In Tennessee, we do get tornadoes, as I'm sure you're aware. This graphic is an official graphic from MTSU and shows you some things to do when you see a tornado or when a tornado happens in your area. If you are on campus, it is possible that the tornado siren will go off. So if you hear that, there's actually one right by the club sport complex, so it'll be pretty loud. If that is the case, seek shelter immediately. For tornadoes, if you see a tornado, you want to find shelter, right? So you want to try and get inside a building into a safe location if you can. For the rec center, the locker rooms is where you want to go if there's a tornado. If you're in the sport club complex, get into that storage hallway best you can. Get into the middle there because there are no windows and there's no access to outside, not much access to outside there. So if you are outside and you cannot get to a inside location, inside a building, don't try to outrun the tornado. That's important. Tornadoes can move very quickly and they can hop around. So what you will want to do is find a ditch and lie face down in the ditch, cover your head, and protect yourself as best you can. Fire. If you are inside the rec center and there's a fire, the staff will respond appropriately, but you will need to evacuate. If you are outside and a building catches on fire or the turf catches on fire or a fence or a light pole or something like that, and there's no staff, call 911 immediately and get the appropriate personnel there to respond. Okay, let's talk about some injuries. So when an injury occurs, it is your responsibility to respond according to your level of training. This is one of the reasons why all safety officers are required to be CPR first aid certified. If you are participating in an activity and an injury occurs, you may have to remove yourself from play and treat that injury. The injury takes precedence over your participation in practice or an event. If we do have staff present, work with them the best you can. If you're in the rec center, of course, we will have staff there. The facility staff will be there. If you're at the club sport complex, we probably will not have staff present. If it's a life-threatening emergency, go ahead and call 911 and use your cell phone. If it's a non-life-threatening emergency, go ahead and treat according to your level of care. It's important to document every injury, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but there is an injury form that each injury will need to accompany. AEDs are another important piece. At this club sport complex, we do have an AED. It is in the hallway in the first cage on the left as soon as you go in. And it's in a red case. And it's important for it to remain there, and it will remain there throughout the whole semester. So make sure you identify that the first chance you get if you're out there. If you're inside the building, the rec center, make sure you talk with the staff if you need an AED. If you're practicing off campus, make sure you communicate with the facility that you're working with to identify where an AED is in case it's needed. This slide is to help you identify what is a life-threatening emergency and what is not. In that emergency conditions section, these are some examples of what a life-threatening emergency could be. So most of the time in sports, we're talking about a head, neck, or back injury or a spine injury or a loss of consciousness. or altered state of consciousness. Sometimes severe breathing problems could be considered life-threatening. Any sort of chest pain or discomfort that might be a sign or symptom of a heart attack. Signs and symptoms of a stroke could also be a life-threatening emergency. Any seizure could be a life-threatening emergency, absolutely. And any severe bleeding or vomiting of blood or passing blood at all. Those are all some of the more common ones we might see in the sports realm. And again, if you do see a life-threatening emergency, go ahead and respond according to your level of care and call 911 if necessary. Let's talk a little bit about injury reporting. Here is an example of an incident and accident report form. So anytime there's an injury, you will need to complete one of these forms. We do have these forms, again, out of the sport club complex and here in the rec center. Again, staff will be able to respond to an injury in the rec center, but out of the club complex, we will not have that, so you will be asked to do that. If you need to use resources such as a first aid kit, ice, Band-Aids, whatever, go ahead and fill out the form. If it's a minor cut and scrape, if someone falls and maybe they just did lose balance for a minute or something like that, and they refuse care, no documentation is necessary for that. Once you fill out these forms, go ahead and make sure to submit those to us. So come into the rec center the next day and turn those in to us. Here's some examples, some more further examples of what injuries do require a form. So if there's an injury that results in missed class or practice, a broken bone, concussions or head injuries, sprains or muscle strains, those are all examples of injuries that need forms. These are injuries that occur during practice or during a game. And again, your responsibility to complete these forms. Some injuries that do not require a form is a scrape or a small cut that doesn't bleed, just common bumps and bruises, or overuse injuries. Some overuse injuries come over time and are not necessarily related to the activity. Now, if it gets bad enough during your activity, then you will respond and fill out a form for that. If your club has additional protocols based on your national governing body or whatever association or league you are in, they may have additional safety protocols. So I would encourage you to look those up and be knowledgeable about what those are and make sure you're following those policies and procedures for that organization as well as ours. And we want to know about that stuff, so let us know. Okay, last couple things here. Practice cancellations. If you're practicing here on campus, mostly at the club sport complex, and inclement weather is on its way, we will do our best to identify that ahead of time and let you know if the fields or the pool is going to be closed. We will email and call club officers until we get a hold of somebody, basically, if that is the case. But remember, if inclement weather arrives during their practice, it is your responsibility, again, to shut that down based on the procedures we talked about earlier. Remember, all practice and events have to have at least one safety officer present. So if there's a practice or event that's being organized and no safety officers can attend, then the practice cannot occur, cannot happen. These are just some things that we don't want to have to do with your club. But if you follow the procedures that we talked about in this training and your officers are following and communicating with us, we shouldn't have any problems. I did want to touch briefly on hazing with you all because this falls in your realm as a safety officer as well. If you see hazing or if you see a practice that might be considered hazing, I want you all to step in and have a conversation with your other officers about canceling that practice or whatever you're doing that you think might be hazing, making sure that doesn't happen again. Suggest an alternative, something more positive to do instead of something negative we don't want to embarrass, or we don't want you to embarrass or harass or anything like that to any of your participants. Club sports should be an inclusive environment. You should be welcoming every member into your organization instead of trying to ridicule or blame those who are in your organization. I can help you have a conversation with some of your officers about that if you see a hazing practice. That's one of the things I'm here for. So let me know if you need any assistance in that. Okay, last few things here. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at any time. Remember to submit the safety officer test and send that to me and Eli as well at that email and my email. Make sure you tag your president on there or otherwise notify them to make sure they're aware that that step is being accomplished. In that email, make sure you give us your name, your position, and make sure we have your updated contact information. That's all I have for you. Thanks again for listening. Have a great and safe semester.